Hello and welcome to the Mind Your Faith podcast, the podcast where we create the bridge from struggle to success. Each episode features a special guest who will speak about a hardship or mental health issue that they've gone through and how their faith helped them. These guests will share their story, coping skills, and ways to conquer. I know you'll love it. Let's get into the episode. Starting off strong, episode 1 is an introduction and my story. This will be a solo episode where I talk about how this podcast came to be and a little peek into my life. For starters, my name is Mailee Minitello and I'm the host of the Mind Your Faith podcast. I am so excited for you guys to see what I've been working on behind the scenes. This podcast has been a work in progress since around the end of my freshman year, and I am just so excited to finally have the platform, the guests, the ability just to put this out there and it to come into real life and just not be an idea or something in my imagination. I'm just very excited to see this be real and come into reality. And I'm just super excited to put it out there. I guess with that having it, let's introduce me. Let's introduce the podcast, how it came to be. I am currently a junior in high school, and this podcast is my last service project prior to graduating. I first came up with this concept the summer before my sophomore year, so end of freshman year as well. And mental health was just always something that stuck out. It always has been a huge issue within my generation. And being inspired by other podcasts and efforts, I knew that I wanted to create a difference as well. So when I thought of this podcast, I knew that it would be the perfect thing to do before graduating. With that being said, I am not an expert by any means for any of these topics we will be discussing, which is why I am joined by my lovely guests each and every episode, because they're more knowledgeable than me. They've gone through their experience. They have their stories. And no one can take that from them. So by sharing their stories and sharing their experience, they can help others. So by bringing in these guests, they are more knowledgeable about these topics and can therefore help more. Each and every single story that they will be sharing with you has touched my life in so many ways. Each and every guest that I have put on this podcast is handpicked by me. So they obviously have shaped me into the person I am, and I know a little bit about every single one of their stories, but hearing the full story is so powerful and so impactful. Like, I'm learning things I didn't know at the same time you guys are learning the full picture. And I think that's very beautiful, and I just love seeing it and making it happen. I know that even though you may not be working through something that they may have gone through, I know that their words and what they say can help, because just because it's not the same situation, no one's going to go through the same thing, but their words can speak to your situation and help you through your hardships and your struggles. And I think that's truly beautiful. Um, and I'm inspired by all of them, and there's inspirations to me in various areas of my life. And they've just helped me in so many ways. And I know that these stories can make a difference for you guys as well, which is why I chose them. I'm hoping this podcast will not only help my community, but many people around the world who may struggle with mental health and hardships in life. I'm hoping to make a difference, you know? And thank you guys all the listeners, for joining me on this journey and, having faith that this is going to be good and supporting me and, being there. And I hope that you guys all enjoy the Mind Your Faith podcast. Now, if you want to help continue the journey, you can share with your family and friends and continue to support. Please like and subscribe and share the episodes and posts. Anything truly helps. And the fact that you're listening right now just makes me so grateful, because the little girl in middle school that needed this podcast would have never imagined that she could be the host and she could be the one to make this podcast for the other little girls and even older girls, or little girls and little boys, older boys, everyone needs this. And, I truly needed this. And so this is for her, and it's also for all of you guys. Speaking of this little girl, let's get into my story. So I was born in California. For those of y'all who do not know, I currently live in Florida, which is quite a ways away from Cali. I also lived in Mississippi for a little bit, but also to say I moved a lot in my life. So I've kind of always been the new girl, so to speak. For no particular reason did we move, other than we were just trying to find a place that felt like home. I went through elementary school like every other person, just a joy-filled kid with lots of friends, always went home happy. I grew up with a loving family and everything seemed fine. until about middle school. Now, middle school was rough for just about everybody, but it was especially rough for me. I moved after fifth grade, which meant that I had to go to the middle school that my elementary school did not lead to, which meant that I would not know many people. Like, a bunch of my friends were going to the school that my elementary school went to, and then I moved just like one city over, so then it was a completely different school. Um, so I had to make all new friends and create a new community for myself. But because I didn't move that far, I had my same church family and I went to the same church. So ultimately, church is where I felt the happiest and where I had my closest, bestest friends because we had been together since like first grade. So these were the people I always went to. But unfortunately, they did not go to my middle school, most of them. Um, so school is hard enough to navigate, it's a big switch from fifth grade to sixth grade and like being in a small little elementary school to being in a big middle school. Like I would say that's probably one of the hardest transitions. Or like even just transitioning like eighth to ninth grade is pretty hard too. It's just like the new building, it just creates, new situations and it's going to be hard to navigate at first. But now I was the new kid. So not only was it hard, I was also new again. And I had this thing called anxiety. Now, I don't know where it came from or how it came to me. And I also, like, in sixth grade, did not put that word to it. I did not call it anxiety. I did not believe I had anxiety. I was just, like, fearful and worried and, like, anxious all the time. But if you would have asked me, it's like, no, like, I don't have anxiety. Like, I'm fine, you know? Um, but it was definitely riddling me. I was definitely riddled with it. I was scared of just about everything, but the place where I felt the most peace was the house of God, aka my church and with my church family. I had made friends with some people from school, and if you would have asked me, I would have told you that we would be best friends forever. That we would have gone to college, we would have gone through high school together, we would have gone to college together, we would have, been those friends that like, our children are friends, and but then in the beginning of seventh grade, my friend group had a big split. And this is the friend group that kind of welcomed me in. Like they had all known each other since elementary school and, they hadn't had like really, they'd all been together and I was just like the new girl, but they let me in. So I felt very accepted and I like obviously loved them all and they were like my closest, bestest friends. But with the big split. And I don't remember why other than just like middle school drama, but now I was down to like four friends. Which there's nothing wrong with. I honestly love like when you just have like a couple close gal pals and you just like have your closest friends you always go to. Like that is way less drama than like, those big friend groups, which there's also nothing wrong with because I'm sure they're fine. Um, but I was happy with my small close circle. But if you're doing the math, you're probably like, well, this was actually 2020. So COVID hit towards the end of my seventh grade year. My anxiety had been coming and going in waves. It was really like I would go to church and I'd be fine. And then I'd like have this like church high from like different conferences, different camps. But then like I'd go back to school and it's just like coming back at me. Everything's coming at me and everything's so hard and everything's so difficult. And like I remember being like a little middle schooler and thinking like worrying about like what college we can go to if I get like if I failed this test. And it's like it's middle school, like I mean yeah, it's important, but like it's not that important. Like, and it was just like little things like that. I would go through my normal day and I wouldn't notice it much, but other days these anxious thoughts would take over my mind and I couldn't shake it, especially at night. I remember being super anxious at night, not being able to sleep, just losing a lot of sleep over that, honestly, and just always being anxious. But my four close friends and I stayed close during the lockdown. We would Zoom to watch movies and YouTube videos. We would FaceTime every night. We would play Among Us together, if y'all remember when that was like the big thing. And when we were finally allowed to, we would hang out and do school together because it was still online, but there was less restrictions on seeing each other. Eventually, we got to go back to school and we were really inseparable at this point. Like the lockdown couldn't even separate us. We were the closest friends. I remember we'd skateboard to each other's houses. We'd go get ice cream. We were just the bestest friends. Um, and of course, throughout this time, whenever we were allowed to, I would go in person to church and I would go to youth group. But if not, we would do the online one and I'd be texting my youth group. group chat and just like FaceTiming these girls. Like these girls were also my friends. And I'd been praying for my anxiety. At this point, I had accepted what it was, and I knew I had anxiety, but I didn't know, like, all I knew was just, oh, just pray. Like, God will take care of it, just pray. Which is very true, but God's also not a vending machine. He's not gonna, like, give you something just because you ask for it. You know? You have to continually pray, and you have to continually, like, go to Him. So, but slowly but surely, God was healing me. He was healing my heart. He was teaching me things through what people would say, and He would give me people that would help me through this, and He was just leading me through this whole time. And this leads me to the summer before freshman year. So a very pivotal, a very transitioning year as well. So I've been given the opportunity to be a capacity student. And if you do not know what that is, it's a student leader within the church. And this student and a bunch of others, it's like 20 students are chosen per location. If you're not familiar with the church, Life Church, there's a bunch of locations all over America. And then there's also virtual locations around the world. And basically 20 students from each American location is invited to go to the main location in Oklahoma for a leadership conference with other student leaders. So you get to meet each other, you get to be taught, you get to be pastored, and you get to be, preached. And it's truly such a powerful week. Oh my gosh. It is an amazing experience. And this was a huge deal for me. Like being a freshman, being chosen to do this when they have the opportunity of every high school student. Like you get chosen from freshman to senior year. There's so many different ages. There's so many different people. And it was just such an honor to be one of the 20 or one of the 15 or one of, however many were chosen each year. Um, so now I have these capacity students as my best friends, which there were a couple that were also in my small group that were chosen. So we got to go together, and that was the sweetest thing. But then I also got to meet the rest of these awesome, incredible students that, yes, they went to my church, but we had kind of a bigger church, so I didn't know everybody. It was impossible to know everybody. So it was really awesome to get to like connect with these other students at such a deeper level because you really get to bond together through the experience of capacity. Um, and they honestly ultimately were the ones who helped me through so much during this time. And it was at this conference where I prayed the big prayer and felt the weight of my anxiety come off of my shoulders. So I came home, I thought I was done. I thought I was healed, and I was on this conference high. I was so excited, so ready. And for a while in my life, I like didn't feel anxious. I didn't feel the anxiety. I was like, yes, I got this. But then high school started. If you don't remember, I said this was the summer before freshman year. So I was not in it yet. But then I went back to school. So if I thought middle school was hard, I was definitely not prepared for high school. Still not. It's okay. Most of my church friends also did not go to my high school because I went to the high school that fed from my middle school. So I did get to go up with these friends that I had from school and these kids I had known for at least 3 years. Um, so I had like 2 or 3 of my capacity student friends with me, but we ran in different friend groups. So we would see each other in the hallway and say, hey, but we wouldn't like eat lunch together. If that makes sense. I thought my friend group though, my like core 4 was stronger than ever. But the first day of school came and they did not talk to me. Same with the second day and the third and so forth. I'd get little words out of them every once in a while when we'd like sit together or whatever, but it was pretty much just on my phone, just there. I later found out that it was because I was quote unquote too good and I wouldn't want to do what they wanted, so they just didn't invite me and therefore we kind of lost touch. So I was alone again. Which really led to like, and I feel like social media is such like a dangerous weapon in this time because when I'm feeling alone and I'm at my house, I'm a little middle school, or sorry, freshman year, I was a little freshy, and I'm just on my phone. All I can see are my friends, quote friends, hanging out, and I wasn't invited. Or I'm even seeing like these famous friend groups, like the ones that are TikTok famous or whatever, and they're all doing fun things and having these fun experiences and going on trips or whatever. And it's like, well, I want friends like that. I want friends that, you don't have to try so hard. I want friends that want me for me, that text me first. That's such a big deal. Um, and so it was just, it just felt like such a a lonely time, and I would go through a time where I'd delete social media, and but then I'd get it. You know, I'd delete TikTok, and then I'd get it a few weeks later, and I didn't have Snapchat. Or actually, I did have Snapchat this time, but I wasn't really on it as much. I would like Instagram was mainly where I saw all this and where this would just like kind of attack me, and just I could hear the devil in these anxious thoughts I get through this time of being lonely. Um, but thankfully, after about a week of this, at lunch, I reconnected to some of my friends from elementary school because there were not as many high schools as there were middle school options. So more of my friends from elementary school were at my high school now. And honestly, it felt like no time had passed. We got close again, and these are my friends now. I just accepted it. Like, these are my friends now. Like, this is awesome. We've known each other like 3 years. I mean, yeah, we missed out on 4 years of each other's lives, but we're back now, so it's great. But my anxiety was back, and I was slowly losing emotion. I would come home sad and angry every day, and I would rarely even go out with these friends. I honestly can't remember if this was my choice or if it was their choice by not inviting me, but really the only place where I felt anything was at church. I had put on emotions for school, and no one saw through it, but I was not happy where I was at mentally. My brother was also struggling emotionally during this time. He was in middle school, and he had gone to the middle school that I had graduated from. But, I had been putting on a face that everything was okay and everything was perfect. But mentally, I was a mess, and I couldn't explain why. And seeing my brother also feel this way was just heartbreaking. I was so anxious that I went back to the way that I was in middle school. I couldn't sleep without melatonin, and even then, it was a toss-up on how many hours I would actually be asleep versus how many I would just lay there with my mind running a million miles a second. My parents caught on what was going on and wanted desperately for my brother and I they wanted desperately to help us. And we took a trip to the west coast of Florida to see some family and friends. And honestly, this changed everything. We fell in love with the small town of Englewood, and with the lease of our house ending in a little over a month, it was perfect timing to find somewhere that felt like home. And this place was really given potential to feel like home. Leaving my school wasn't hard. Really, I mean, I remember like it was like, oh, you doing schools? And I had toured, if y'all know my current school, Lemon Bay. And it was like awesome. I loved it. Like the sports and like the campus was huge, and there was only like 300 people per class, which is unheard of in Wellington. There's like 500 or 600 per class over there. So it was definitely more smaller, which I loved, and I loved more the small town feel of this town. So there are definitely people over there that I miss for sure. And I still text them and talk to them. And I stay in touch with my friends over there. But my church was where I was really gonna miss, and what was really difficult for me to leave. I knew we were moving for a month before we actually did, but I didn't tell my church friends until 2 weeks prior to moving. It was like ripping off the Band-Aid, and I just didn't want to. I felt like by telling people, it made it real. And I remember I was sitting at a dinner with a couple friends, and I told them I was moving. I remember my friends didn't believe me. They texted my mom and asked to see our new, like, house agreement or something, and they didn't believe me. They thought I was April Foolsing them. And no, I was being real. Because it was like 2 weeks I'm gone. It's a very shocking thing. I cried and cried countless nights myself to sleep while being in Wellington and while being here for the first couple weeks. I was leaving my second family, which I consider to be my church family, and my anxiety grew at the thought not finding another church like this. I remember it was worship night at my old church, and no one knew I was moving yet. I hadn't told people yet, but I started bawling. I was surrounded by my capacity friends. We were all at the front worshiping in what I now know is called a praise pit. But we were just all there, and I started sobbing, and no one knew why. And they just hugged me, and they just were there for me, and they just prayed over me. And it was truly a powerful thing because none of them knew what was going on, but it was just powerful to see how much they loved me. And that made it even harder, honestly. But it was awesome to see their support. Um, So we moved midway through my freshman year. It was around Thanksgiving time. And once again, I was the new kid. My season of loneliness was only growing bigger. And when I felt like I was ahead, I was now behind again. My new school was better than I imagined, though, I can now say. I walked onto the soccer team, my second week being there, midway through the season, and during this time, these girls became my best friends while I was still finding my community. Because I know, like, you move midway through, you don't know who your friends are, so I just walked on a team and like, I mean, I played soccer when I was younger, but I had taken a break and then I came back. And so these girls were my friends during this time. And while I was looking for who would be my like permanent friends, but for this time, these guys are my friends, and honestly, some of them still are today. Um, I tried church after church after church, but nothing was feeling like my old church, and honestly, I was losing hope. I felt lonely, far from God, and again, would cry myself to sleep. Until one day, my mom saw a bumper sticker in the school parking lot for Young Life, which is a community full of other high schoolers who love God, exactly like I did. And my mom had remembered Young Life from when she was in high school, and she did some research on if there was one in this area, and it turns out my high school had a Young Life club. I joined and started making friends with these girls. Today, these girls are my bestest friends. Um, I volunteer for the middle school version of Young Life, which my brother goes to and loves, by the way. And he brings all his friends, and he has joy in his school as well, which is just incredible to see. And I also serve at camp every summer. Um, that's besides the point though. Going to Young Life eventually led me to try Coast Life Church because one of the girls in Young Life had been going to this church and she'd also gone to a life church where she used to live, which was in Oklahoma. So that was really cool to like bring up Life Church and then be like, well, where do you go? What's like Life Church? And so I tried Coast Life, and this church became my church home. Once again, I found myself in godly community and had friends that pushed me towards Christ. My anxiety slowly grew smaller, and yes, today I do sometimes feel anxious about certain situations, but nothing compared to how I used to be. I can sleep without melatonin. I'm not constantly anxious, and I have friends that if I do feel like that, I know I can reach out and they can help me. This is all thanks to God and what He has done in my life. I still attend Coast Life every single week, and Coast Life Youth, which is also a huge part of my life. Young Life brought me my closest friends, and I can't imagine not knowing these girls. Moving to the other side of Florida was the best thing we could have done. My family is closer than ever, my brother and I are both happy, and God is the center of it all. We found a place that feels like home. And although I do miss Wellington sometimes, I still talk to those I love there and see them every once in a while, but Englewood is definitely my home. God was orchestrating all throughout this whole time, and one of my favorite verses is Jeremiah 29:11, which is, "For I know the plan I have for you, says the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you." Although I felt like sometimes his plans were not good or unfair, they led me here, and I am so thankful for that. I hope my story helps some of y'all, and like always, my comments and DMs are open if anyone has any questions or wants to talk. This goes for every single episode as well. This podcast is truly for you all, and I cannot wait to see it grow and flourish and become all that it has. And because this is only episode 1, y'all. Y'all are not ready for what comes next because I already got episodes ready and they are coming, and y'all better get hyped because they're so good. And in order to catch up with those episodes, y'all don't forget to subscribe to the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or wherever you listen. Also, the video of the filming of this podcast episode will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Mind Your Faith Podcast. And also follow the Instagram at Mind Your Faith Podcast to stay up to date and catch exclusive content on there. Please share with family and friends to continue the growth. Thank you all so much for listening. I am so grateful for every single one of y'all. Remember, you're not alone if you mind your faith and keep your faith in mind. Jesus loves you. Peace out, y'all.